Are you a woman in the corporate world striving to break barriers, challenge unconscious bias, and lead the way for women in leadership roles globally? If so, this is the podcast for you. Introducing Leading Ladies Who Lunch. The lunch hour is usually the time when colleagues get together for real, honest conversations about work, life, and everything in between. In each episode of Leading Ladies Who Lunch, we'll delve into insightful discussions and share actionable strategies to help you navigate corporate life. Co-hosted by me, Cicy George, a leadership development architect and inspirational speaker. I'm thrilled to share my experience and expertise on leadership, mentorship, and organizational intelligence to help you own your career.
And me, Rachel Lowndes, CEO and founder, imposter syndrome expert, and mindset coach at Rachel Lowndes Coaching and Consulting. Passionate about helping women conquer imposter syndrome and unleash their inner confidence to get the recognition and promotions they deserve.
Jam-packed with insightful conversations, expert advice, and inspiring stories from a diverse group, we'll explore how to overcome obstacles, shatter those glass ceilings, and build unshakable mindsets to unlock your true potential. So whether you're sipping a coffee or enjoying a meal at your desk, tune in for a no-host bar lunchtime chat. Episodes will be dropped every 2 weeks. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
Leading Ladies Who Lunch, empowering women, one conversation at a time.
Hello, and welcome back to the Leading Ladies Who Lunch podcast. In our last episode, we talked about the behaviors that make a great leader. You know, when you're growing in your career as a leader, it's a process. And it is a process that takes a couple of things. Having a growth mindset, the willingness to fail and persevere, that constant introspection and reflection. And it certainly does not happen overnight. You know, when I was younger, I didn't think of becoming a quote unquote leader, and I didn't even think of myself as potentially becoming one. I was just trying to gain experience, any kind of experience that would give me a myriad of skill sets. When I was really young, though, truthfully, being in leadership just was not something that was even close to what I wanted to do. So I'll bring you in a little bit of a secret. I actually wanted to be a flight attendant. And I'm talking about when I was a teenager. Whenever my parents took me on trips around the world, I always thought the flight attendants were so cool, so glam, almost as if the air around them was just different from the one around me. But I don't know, that could have just been me going through my frump girl phase. Rachel, what about you? What was something your younger self wanted to do or become?
Well, I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do, to be honest, when I was younger. And, you know, maybe that was part of the problem. I mean, I think I've touched on before, I wanted to be a tennis racket. So obviously that's not a real thing.
Right.
I wanted to be a tennis player, but I wasn't talented enough. But, you know, I think that was part of the problem. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. But like you, I had a desire to travel, and that potentially had a lot to do with what was kind of going on at home. So I didn't really have a happy set of teenage years, and I was desperate to get away. And, you know, my answer to that was to kind of study travel. But
Sure.
my father wouldn't let me do that. So off I went to university. He forced me to go to university. And I went and did English because, again, didn't know what I wanted to do. Bit of a cop-out degree as well. I barely scraped through that, to be honest. And and the problem with that is that it was kind of someone else's idea of what I should be doing and not really mine. Like I wasn't really connected to it. I kind of did English because it's like, oh, well, I got an A in English at A level. So A level is kind of like the next step after high school. So I'll do that kind of thing. And I did actually study teaching initially, but I kind of gave it up after a year because, again, that was something my parents encouraged me to do, and I didn't really want to be a teacher. So I kind of realized that halfway through and went, oh, I'll just do English and get rid of the teaching part. So from childhood, I never really felt like I had permission to do what I wanted, even up to that point of being an early adult, like an 18, 19-year-old. And the result was that I felt quite directionless in my early adult life and my career, which kind of, I guess, leads us nicely to the topic of today's episode, Cicy.
I think so too. And, now that we've both had time, right, in our careers to reflect on, how we've progressed as professionals, you definitely begin to see things from a newer lens. You see things differently. And I'm sure there's people out there right now who are maybe junior or a little bit younger in their career thinking, what the heck am I supposed to do with this job I have?
Yeah.
And that's why we're spending this time together dishing out all of the things we would have told our younger selves. So, Rachel, what do you think? What would be some key moments for you that had such an impact and maybe even transformed you in some way?
Yeah, well, I mean, coming up through the ranks, I made plenty of mistakes, as we do, and I think that's part of everyone's journey. And it's certainly easy to reflect back and say, oh, now I get it, right? This is what I would do
Right.
differently. And I didn't really have any role models either. Like my parents were teachers, as I've said, but they had very set ways and beliefs about what someone like me should be doing, their daughter. So I kind of bumbled from job to job, place to place, trying to find my way. But I wish I had been more encouraged to think about, where I was going a little bit more and been a bit more intentional about having a career over just a job. And so,
Right.
kind of what I mean by that is I spent too much time focusing on doing a job and getting a paycheck and having fun, which, it's fine for a couple of years in your 20s. I think that's normal kind of behavior. But
Right.
not at any one point did I really think about where I was going. And even when I hit 30, I was still kind of faffing around, to be honest, right? And for any Americans listening, faffing just means not really being intentional.
I love the Google Translate in real time.
I know the colloquialisms. But I truly believe that, someone was actually going to come along and save me from myself. Like talk about being a bit of a daydreamer. Like I kind of blame Hollywood for this because, my favorite movie when I was a teen was Pretty Woman. So that kind of gives you some insight into my mind. Like someone's going to come
Yeah.
and save me from myself.
It's a
Doesn't
classic.
actually. Yeah, it doesn't happen. So
No, not at all.
I wish. It wasn't until my late 30s and early 40s, really, that I started thinking about, where I was going and what I was doing. And of course, there's many examples of people commencing new careers later in life. Vera Wang, for example, Clint Eastwood as well. So it's never too late to kind of pivot, change your career, and kind of realize where you're going. But it might have been a good idea to think about this a bit earlier. I wouldn't change my life, right? But I perhaps would give my younger self, a few tips to help her if I could.
Wow. Every time we speak, I am finding we really are so similar. And I would say it was the same for me.
Right.
I think I was focused more on getting jobs and gaining experience. But, to me, in my early 20s and even into my 30s, it didn't matter what type of work I was doing, just like you, as long as I was gaining some type of experience. And I just wanted to make sure my experience was well-rounded. When I was a student, all I ever heard was, "Oh, you have to be a well-rounded student. Have the good top-notch grades, have the extracurriculars, the club activities, the sports activities." So just like that, I wanted to be a well-rounded professional. I wanted to have a myriad of experiences and varying, skill sets. And like you're describing, I wasn't focused on the type of work that would bring meaning and joy into my professional life until, yeah, probably the late 30s. I was a late bloomer. And I would attribute that to all of the failed examples of leadership that I had experienced up until that point that brought me to the conclusion, yeah, this is what I want to do for my professional career. And again, just like you, I wouldn't change it for the world. I appreciate all of the different experiences that made me quote unquote well-rounded, from working in corporate environments in retail, healthcare, finance, in jobs like HR, quality, administration, even operational roles, and being in academia. It was because of all those roles in those different industries that led me to where I am today. So just like you, I also would not change any of it.
Mm.
But I think, over time, especially in the last few years, I've had ample time to reflect and, open up my perspective. And all the experience I've had really taught me what I know now. And what I've learned in my career has become so pivotal because it's become my why for other things as well. Like the why is the driver, the work that I'm doing every day in my role at Macy's.
Mhm.
It's also one of the reasons why you and I started this podcast to share what we've both learned about working in corporate and leadership in a way that's practical for all of you. It's the purpose for all that I'm building for myself outside of that. And to be honest, it is not something I ever imagined myself pursuing.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for people to understand that it's okay to have a varied career because we do learn so much about ourselves along the way and how things work,
Mhm.
how we work as well. We also learn what we do and don't like. So, in effect, it's experimenting with what works for us. And there's nothing really wrong with that because actually, if you think about it, all of those experiences kind of lend themselves to becoming a more well-rounded leader. And I think you'll find a lot of people who are in leadership roles who are considered great leaders did start in like the mailroom or the reception, and they worked their way
Right.
through and they worked at different jobs, and they might have like interesting varied stories, but then can like pull from each of those experiences into who they are and what they are as a leader now. So yeah, like the variation, experimentation, nothing wrong with it at all.
Exactly. So let's share some of our key learnings that we would give as advice to our younger selves. Rachel, why don't you start?
Oh, thanks, Cicy. I'd love to. Okay, so here's what I would tell my younger self. So, number one, ask for help. I was too afraid to admit when I needed help because, I saw this as a weakness and that I would be exposed for my lack of knowledge. Now, there's that, imposter theme in my life again, but not asking for help is a career limiting move. And in fact, does the opposite of showing weakness. It shows strength. It shows that you are willing to say, hey, I'm not sure how to do this. Can you help? Which then in turns opens you up to creating relationships and collaborations with your managers and your peers. And it could even open you up to opportunities that you might not have had access to before because you're choosing to stay silent and in that fixed mindset. So definitely ask for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. The other
Mhm.
thing I'd tell my younger self is like learn more, like learn how to
Mm.
set goals, learn more about myself, learn about what I want to do. I didn't really put any energy into developing any of my skills further. And, that was a mistake. I think that's got a lot to do with the fact that I lacked a bit of confidence. And that meant I got left behind in the workforce. This is really important now as well about learning more because we are in an age of technology and it's the workforce is changing at such a speed that there's a lot more value in continued learning. So gone are the days where you've got a 20-year long tenure in a job. You might have a tenure in a job for a company, but you're probably not doing the same job for 20 years like you once did.
No, no.
So learn more, definitely, like continued learning, very important. And the third thing would be to stop wasting time worrying about what people think of me. Oh, this one is
Love
a
it.
doozy, right? Literally cannot believe now why I worried about so much about what other people thought about me, right? That, this was more about my appearance than my work. I always felt I was a good worker, and I am still, but I mean, I did worry whether I was actually smart enough and that kind of thing as well. So there was an element of that, but I was really obsessed with looking perfect. I was never fit enough. I was never skinny enough. I was never pretty enough. Which is insane because I was ridiculously fit back then. And
And you
kind
still
of,
are.
yeah, and also like not worrying that I was going to look stupid or make a fool out of myself if I said something at work as well. Kind of really held me back because you're not kind of it goes back to that learning and asking for help thing, doesn't it? So it's such a waste of time and energy to worry about what other people are thinking about you because in the reality, right, no one actually cares. They are too busy thinking about themselves. And once you realize this type of thinking is kind of prevalent across everyone. You'll find and release this kind of thinking from your own mind, you're going to find you're going to have so much more peace in yourself and your life. So yeah, stop wasting time worrying about what others think, learn more and ask for help.
I love all of these. I would imagine that I've had a number of mentors over the years, but if I was thinking about my younger self and I had a mentor, I think this is exactly the kind of advice that person would have given me at that time. Especially your last point, it really resonated with me. The whole point about why do we give so much importance, even
Mm,
in the workplace, on
mhm,
how we look, and if
mm,
people we look okay, and do we fit that picture of what people have in mind for us? I like you, I've wasted so much time worrying about that, and then trying to buy certain clothes or
yeah,
make my hair more, I don't know, come across as more leader like qualities. My hair, of all things,
yeah.
should look like a leader. It's not ridiculous. I spend so much
Well,
time in the mornings getting ready for work, flat ironing my hair, blow drying it, all the products, all just to get ready to go to an office where I probably saw maybe 3 or 4 people every day.
right.
It's ridiculous the kinds of things that we would put ourselves through.
Yes,
I
that
want
sense of belonging, though, isn't it? It's like that
to,
validation, that need, and especially as you're from your background, you're a woman of color, and you're probably working in a predominantly white environment.
exactly.
A bit of unconscious bias is at play there as well. So yeah, that sense of belonging.
Yeah, 100%. I always felt that I had to flat iron my hair or wear my hair straight to be more accepted.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until later, and probably, I guess, the result of the pandemic and everything being virtual, that I've come to really appreciate my wavy hair. It's
Oh,
actually
it's
quite
beautiful.
pretty.
You have gorgeous hair.
Yeah. So, so I'm definitely resonating with all the points that you made.
Yeah,
And
what would you tell your younger self, Cici?
oh my gosh, there is a lot of things I would tell younger Cicy, but I'll limit it to just a few.
Okay.
So the first I would say, and this was a big one that I really had to learn and accept over time, is
Mm,
that it's okay to have a moment of failure,
mm,
because that moment of failure is part of your journey. It happened for a reason. You're
mm,
meant to walk away learning something from it. What I used to do when I made a mistake at work earlier in my career, I spent hours, if not days, mulling and fretting over that one mistake. I would rehash the entire scenario over and over again in my head and worry about it when everyone else clearly moved
moved on.
on. It was
Yeah.
it was ridiculous that the kinds of things I would put myself through for no reason. I wish I would have had that voice to say, it's okay. It
Mm,
doesn't mean you're a bad person,
mhm.
but let's take the learning out of that moment and figure out how we're going to carry that lesson forward so you
Yeah.
become an even better professional. I
Mm,
wish I didn't spend so much time feeding into that negative self-talk, and it would get so bad. So that was definitely one thing I would definitely tell my younger self.
mhm.
The second thing, and I think this really, I think this will be pertinent for those who identify as being diverse,
Mhm.
is to speak up and to use my voice to challenge things.
Mm.
This isn't something that comes easy for me at all. And I do think it's because of my cultural upbringing that has a lot to do with it.
Mm.
Being
Mhm.
Indian American, we are raised with you should not challenge authority.
Mhm.
Respect your elders, which usually means not speaking up.
Right.
So that trait, that quality had an impact, on my career as a working professional because I was perceived by others as being demure.
Right.
Several people have told me over and over again, wow, you're really demure. And I just kept thinking, oh, that sucks. You got labeled like that. I thought of it as a bad thing because, you know, people saw leaders as, I hate to say it, but aggressive and ambitious and
Mm.
go-getters, and they're vocal and they're taking charge. And I wasn't seen as doing any of those things. So I didn't speak up in meetings. I really didn't challenge status quo or share my ideas. I
Mhm.
didn't think my ideas were good enough
Right.
to be shared.
Mhm.
So I, like, just like you, I had that imposter syndrome coming up for me at multiple points.
Yeah.
And just over time, I learned that nobody was benefiting from me sitting quietly,
Mhm.
and least of all me. I had to learn that there were times when I needed to challenge what others were saying about me. And I just sat there and took that. I accepted, I didn't challenge it. And it wasn't until I gained more experience in the workplace and I've had this evolution, coming to terms with myself, that I realized it's okay to speak up, and you can speak up and challenge things and still say it in a very respectful way, but
Yeah.
that in a way that conveys and communicates
Mhm.
your executive presence, your thought leadership, and people will respect you all the more. So definitely speaking up and challenging things. And then I'll wrap up with this last one. And again, something I learned later was networking can do so much for you. So the leadership trifecta, you have your mentor, your sponsor, your coach, right? You got those three people, you've got your own personal board of directors, if you will.
Right.
But networking is how you find people, it's how you create projects, it's how you create momentum, it's how seek out opportunities, it's how you get word out about who you are and your brand. And
Mhm.
I didn't realize how important networking was until I was in my, I would say, I don't know, mid to late 30s.
Yeah.
And now that I've had sufficient time to network, I can see the value because networking has not only brought me people who have filled the roles of mentor, sponsor, and coach, it's also given me such life-changing opportunities as to meet a person from halfway across the world and start a podcast with. I mean, isn't that just crazy to, how networking can do that for you? It's like
Yeah.
you really don't know what doors will open either by way of exposure or opportunity or, just collaboration. But networking can do so much. And it's something that I think you have to seek out fervently the opportunities to network. So joining LinkedIn, becoming part of, affiliation groups and affinity groups and starting to make connections that way is one really great way that you can start to network. And I think it's something that we don't talk enough about, and people still have no idea how to go about doing that.
Definitely. Amen to that. Networking is a great share there, Cici. Sharing our knowledge and experience is the reason why, as you say, we started this podcast so that you can use these stories and tips to help you build confidence in your career and leadership journey. Our hope, as always, is that you have some insights to take away with you. And today we share these delightful insights and kind of our strategies that with things we would have told our younger selves that all leaders and mentors can give away for free. And it's free for you here today in this podcast.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Leading Ladies Who Lunch podcast. If you like this episode, we would be so grateful if you can share it with your friends and tag us on social media at Leading Ladies Who Lunch. Your reviews of this podcast mean so much to us. We'd love it if you could rate it and subscribe to the show.
Remember, you can find us and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. Subscribe to stay up to date with the latest episodes and follow us on Instagram at Leading Ladies Who Lunch.
Tune in 2 weeks where we will be talking all about innovating yourself, personal branding, and promotion beyond your 9 to 5.
Oh, that one will be good. I'm excited about that one. Until then, stay sassy. Thank you for joining us on the empowering journey at the Leading Ladies Who Lunch podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our insightful discussions, actionable strategies, and inspiring stories that we break down during each episode. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to Leading Ladies Who Lunch on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And remember, the conversations you've heard on this podcast are just the beginning of your journey. Let your voice be heard, inspire change, and continue breaking barriers as you lead with authenticity, resilience, and unwavering determination.
Until next time, keep embracing your leadership potential, challenging the norms, and shaping a better world for women in the workplace. Leading Ladies Who Lunch, empowering women, changing lives.